Hello, my name is Tabs, and welcome to episode 111 of the Grove podcast, or should I say Nelson, as I'm also watching the cricket at the moment. So there's a reference for you if you know what I'm talking about. Anyway, I hope you're all doing well and enjoying the fact that we actually have some football to talk about, as well as the latest Orm bomb and here we go from Mr. Romano. So yeah, it's been a pretty good couple of days for the Arsenal, and we're going to look to cover all of that in the pod throughout the pod. And joining me today to talk all this stuff, freshest from his very own Italian training camp, and by training camp I mean enjoying fine wine, food, coffee, and company, is Jamie. Ciao, Jamie, come stai?
All right, mate. How's it going?
Bene, grazie mille. Okay, good. Right. That's...
I'm not gonna be able to Italian you in any way, shape, or form, am I? So
it wouldn't take very much, to be honest. It wouldn't take much at all. So there we go. All right. Anyway, so as I said, look, in today's show, we're going to look back at the friendly against AC Milan. Talking of Italian, a win, of course, and then we're going to talk about transfers, all the latest news, all the latest updates. As I said, there's been quite a few since we last did a non-community cast podcast, and there we go. And look, talking of which, I just want to really say thank you to all the amazing feedback that we had from our recent community cast on the socials. That we did had a chat with Hilsey the Gooner, Trevor, and it was an amazing chat. He could talk for the Arsenal. He's got a story and a half. He's the one about him in Ukraine and the taxis and fearing for his life is an interesting one, to say the least. A great character, and look, if you haven't listened to already, worth a listen. I encourage you to do so. And I mean, unfortunately, all the feedback has been about how great he's been. So unfortunately, we can't have him. I can't have him on every week, but we'll do our best. We'll do our best. So there we go. So a football match to talk about, AC Milan, and as we always do, and for the first time this season, Jamie, what was your highlight and low light from the AC Milan game, even though it was a friendly?
Well, having only seen the smallest amount of highlights, the highlight was the everything. Well, I think it's two 15-year-olds playing for me. Actually, I think Max Dowman and the other lad whose name I can't remember, but
Salmon.
Salmon. That's it, Malik Salmon. The two of them playing, looking comfortable, and two lads that I've been really keen to. It feels like they're younger and younger when we become aware of them now, right? You don't become aware of them because they're scoring goals at under 18s anymore. You become aware of them because they're scoring goals at like under 14. So seeing the two of them take to the pitch on the highlights was pretty fun. And then Nwaneri's performance, that's my kind of group highlight. Is just, it was a bit of a Hale End day, right?
Yeah.
And then low light. I mean, it's a who cares? But maybe it was the penalty miss by Salmon. But who cares? There's not really one, is there?
No, exactly. Yeah. To top off your highlight, for me, I really enjoyed seeing the new boys, Norgaard, Kepa, Zubimendi. They all offered something in their own right, and nothing too unsurprising. So which is a good thing, and they seem to settle in well. And we'll discuss all that. And then, as you said, Ethan and Dowman and Salmon sort of stood out as well as particularly Ethan in that first half, and just the fact that Dowman and Salmon are out in Singapore playing with the boys, and not looking out of place is amazing. And I guess losing the penalty shootout is. I don't think I even blinked at the fact that we lost it. Lorenzo Torriani was man of the match for me, and maybe not scoring more than one goal, but again, I think that's down to the keeper. But hey, same old story with the Arsenal, and let's hope our latest recruits may change that. I'm only joking partially, but also there's an element of seriousness there.
Even in that low light, actually, Kepa goes and saves 3 penalties, doesn't he? Which is kind of ironic given his history with penalty shootouts, right?
Yeah.
So,
I was wondering if he wasn't in goal, would he be asked to be subbed on? So there we go. But I don't know, and maybe we will get to finally see if we get to a penalty shootout. Arteta living up to the "I will change my goalkeepers to suit the situation." So let's see. Especially if Raya continues to dive even before the whistle's being blown. So
It's not a strong suit, is it? There was
no,
that one
no,
time, and other than that, it's been a bit rushed. It's been
no.
a bit naff, yeah.
Indeed. Indeed. So look, we will sort of quickly go through it, but to follow the format, the lineup, and in terms of the starting lineup, it was pretty strong for a friendly, for our first main friendly of the season. So you had Raya, White, Saliba, Calafiori, Zinchenko, and then Norgaard, Rice, and Nwaneri in the middle, and Saka, Havertz, Martinelli. So you wouldn't, if you were to see that team starting a Premiership game, you wouldn't bat an eyelid. So Timber's still not in the squad, still recovering, I think, from his surgery and getting up to speed, and also Big G, having sort of trained out in Spain, trained in England, trained in Singapore. I think he had a bit of a niggle from the Watford behind closed door friendly, and just all these chopping and changing for someone who's still recovering. I think it's just best to be cautious. So, I mean, my big thought from the lineup was seeing Calafiori at left centre back. I was pleased to see that. Interested to see how that does. And then Nwaneri playing in the Odegaard role, but more inside, more of a 10 than a right 8. And then I know the stories have been about Havertz getting bigger, and I know there's been all the AI silly pictures, but he's bulked up. He's a proper centre forward. He's heard Gyökeres is coming, and he wants to match the upper body. So and Nwaneri's also looking bigger. So any thoughts on the lineup? Anything you immediately thought or took from that lineup?
No, I mean not a huge amount. I think yeah, pretty much the same as yourself. It's a decent lineup. It's a lineup you expect to go and win games in the Premier League, and that's quite fun to see. And obviously you got a massive, great big bench there that you can roll players on and off, and it was nice to see some of those lads come on. And yeah, general thoughts kind of similar from the highlights package I saw. Havertz does look like a big boy at the moment. There's no doubt that he has definitely worked on that upper body whilst he was injured and rehabbing. So, but I thought that even on last time game of the season that we were at, and he came on, I think sub, didn't he? And he just, you could see then he looked like he had a little bit more on his arms and chest. So yeah, I think that could actually potentially it might be an exciting season for him actually. So yeah, pretty much the same impressions to be honest.
No, good. And so, what was your overall response, to the result, to the game, to what you saw? I mean, it's different. I mean, it's very different to the old days where Wenger used to take the team up into the Austrian Alps and we'd play a bunch of farmers and whatever, and all the team were running out in bin bags, sweating off their
The trialists as well normally, yeah.
yeah, as well, and sweating off their 2 weeks in Magaluf and whatnot. I mean, this team looked ready to go from the off, and like,
Yeah.
wow. So, what were your just general impressions and of the performance of the game?
Well, I think it's a good pre-season for us, right? Because we've seen a load of other teams getting involved in Mickey Mouse stuff, whilst we've had a decent break, and ultimately, yeah, everybody looked like they were fit. We've absolutely battered Milan in that game. I know, again, their lineup was not anything special, but it's always nice to see them go out there for the first meaningful friendly and just we've absolutely dominated the game. They've barely had a chance. I think they had one go down the throat a Kepa, and that's about it. And we've forced their keeper to make a hell of a lot of stops. And that's whilst it was a strong side, at the same time you can point to where there are a few optimizations. Let's put it that way, right? So yeah, great to see. Really positive. You don't read massive amounts into these pre-seasons, do you? But it just looks like they're fresh, they're ready. And I think in general, to me, I've got kind of a bit of a confidence that this is probably quite a happy and driven camp at this point in time, and really looking forward to the season. Yourself?
Yeah, I mean, you're right. It's a friendly. It's the first one. It's hard to properly dissect. I mean, I think just as long as you don't come out with anything alarming, then it's all about building relationships, building formations, embedding new players, getting fit, getting fit. You're playing with a mixed up team. Also, AC Milan. I mean, the Serie A start a week after the Premiership, so they're maybe a
Yep.
bit behind in terms of their preparations, and also it was very hot by all accounts. So what you just don't want to see is anything glaring, anything ridiculous, anything like okay, that doesn't look good, or that doesn't look good, and then you'll get the few highlights, and players will pick on some individuals in a minute and pick in a good way. But it was also a very familiar, very Arsenal display, dominant, lots of possession. And again, it's a friendly. You can't really dissect the stats too much, but we had 23 shots, 9 on target. Familiar story. Only scored 1, but 14 corners, 90% accuracy. And I said if it wasn't for their keeper, the scoreline should have been a lot more. So, yeah, I think it was a very familiar Arsenal performance. But given that it's the first game of pre-season, then things can only improve and get better. And look, the win is nice. And I'm sure there's a lot that Arteta can take away from it. And in typical preseason fashion, you have wholesale changes in the second half, which gave us a chance to see some players. So the likes of Kepa came on, and as you said, like Dowman and Salmon came on. Reece Nelson maybe a bit of a shot window performance. Zubimendi came on second half. So yeah, I think there was some talking points. So in terms of players, and you did mention them in your sort of highlight. What did you particularly like about Nwaneri's performance, and as well about Dowman and Salmon?
Well, there's a gorgeous moment where he leaves his man for dead. There was it was quite funny. It looked like a little bit of a mismatch. In fairness, the Milan player was the big lumbering. I think it's a Serbian lad. I think might be wrong. I can't remember his name, but big lumbering lad going after him, and he just does a beautiful turn.
Yeah,
Gets away from him, and I think he might have made him around that time as well. But yeah, so Nwaneri just seemed to be kind of nice flicks, nice and composed, looked really comfortable. And that's probably the main thing. He looked comfortable and not forced. And I think last season, when we saw him in the side, when he was playing on the right, he looked very comfortable, and he'd been given a job to do, and it was, go out there and imitate, do your best impression of a Bukayo Saka. And he took to that really nicely. I felt when he moved into the Odegaard role a few times, he didn't look particularly comfortable. He didn't look like he was finding the pockets of space that he wanted to be in, and he looked perhaps a little bit forced. And I think today, not today, but rather in the Milan game, he just looked a little bit more like he was playing as himself in that role. He is a different player to Martin Odegaard. There are, technical similarities, but ultimately they are very different as players. We might want to mould him into being a little bit more of a Martin Odegaard in some respects, but he also needs to still be himself and have his own footballing personality on display. And it looked like that was there, which you saw a lot of when he was playing out wide last season. I didn't see as much of it when he was playing inside. If they, and it sounds like there's a lot of talk around sort of all of the guys who spend time in and around those at the club, like your James McNicholas and the David Ornstein, etc. People that are kind of your true ITK reporters are seemingly talking about his future very much being seen in the central roles more so than out wide. Which I'll be honest, I kind of felt last season when I saw him, I wondered if he was going to be more of a guy that would gravitate towards becoming a wide player. It happens, right? David Bentley was in that position. But it is interesting that they seem like they want to persist with him there. They've gone and got Madueke in as the right winger. So I'm looking forward to seeing more of him there. So that was really the main thing, I think, for me, was more, the eye-catching moments were always there with an Ethan. He's an eye-catching player. That's his stock and trade. But I think the comfort that he showed and the personality that was coming out of him at the right eight was really good to see.
I agreed. He did shine in the first half. There was that one time on the left hand side where he did the controlled turn and volley in one movement, which was like brilliant, and unlucky not to score. I think the goalkeeper just turned it past the post, and I remember that sort of when he tricked the defender on the touchline and attached the box. So those were moments. Yeah, I think the difference between him and Odegaard is more Nwaneri's more of a 10, and Odegaard's more of an 8. and which have there's different profiles, different type of players, different actions. You're not going to see him come deep and get the ball from the back four, which Odegaard does, and Odegaard dictates play and is the rhythm. And maybe now that we have a Zubimendi, we're going to see less of that, and we have the likes of Odegaard further forward. We have the likes of Nwaneri further forward, because Zubimendi, that's your job now, and therefore we can be more progressive, faster, more attacking, and just improve on that area last year, whereas beforehand we would be too many players behind the ball and not enough players, attacking players in front of the ball. So therefore it's less of a risk playing Nwaneri, and let your demands of him are less. So therefore, if he can shine in that role, then fantastic. So and look, let's stick with the first half. I mean, Saka was Saka, involved a lot. We're still very right hand side dominant. He was great, and Norgaard, I was sort of particularly looking out for him, and it was a bit odd. I looked out for him, didn't really notice him, but that's exactly sort of his job. You don't want to notice him; you just want to give and
Solid,
go.
right? I don't think he's been brought in to be a dominant player. He's been brought in to be a
No,
solid player, right? That's the
yeah,
that's the fit that we're looking for, and yeah, happy,
yeah.
you know.
Yeah, give and go, give and go. That's it. It's just an option outlet, break up play, pass on. He's nothing going to be doing anything too spectacular. And as I said, you want to notice him by not noticing, if you get the paradox. So yeah, exactly what we got him for. And he just seemed to, yeah, he seemed like he's been playing for us for years. That's the sort of thing. If you were to blur your eyes a bit, is it Jorginho? Is it Norgaard? You would just sort of see, yeah, superb. So I think yeah, what we're getting for the money there, first impressions, I think he's just going to be, right up our street, and exactly sort of what we need as a bench player, as a backup player, even as a first team player. And I think one of the things that maybe is that as Zubimendi sort of settles into the Premier League, as settles into the team, there might be times we're expecting Zubimendi to start, but Nordgaard might start just to be that control and that settled player. If you were to say he starts against Man United first game of the season, I wouldn't be surprised. Going away to Old Trafford, yeah, a bit tricky. We've always found it a bit tricky. Would it surprise me if he started just because we maybe be a bit conservative? Yeah, I could see it happening. Whether we're happy with it or not, I don't know. But it wouldn't surprise me if, given we want to bed um, bed Zubimendi in. But so let's see how that goes. And then
Send
look,
that lay out Brian and Bumo. That's probably the way, isn't it? Yeah.
well, yeah,
Yeah,
I'm not too fearful. I'm not too
get one
fearful.
in get one in early. That's
Yeah,
the
exactly. Yeah,
yeah,
exactly. Yeah, tell it. You know what you did to Martinelli last year? Just
yeah.
a bit more subtle without getting sent off, and that'll do us fine. Thank you very much. Um, and then second half, I think the main highlight. Well, actually, the highlights were Dowman and Salmon, but we did score a goal. Saka scored a bit of a scuff in the 52nd minute. Just a nice run at the far post. Lovely cross by Kivior. Great. I think we tried it a few times. Nice to see. But yeah, I mean, as I said, you picked them out as your highlight. Dowman and Salmon. What do you have to say on them?
There was nothing massively eye catching as much as just that two 15-year-olds that stepped on a football pitch with a load of blokes and looked fine. And that's that I think is a tremendous achievement for 15-year-olds.
Yeah,
It's just ridiculous, isn't it? And yeah, look like a couple of promising young guys. I've seen them, playing a bit in the youth. Salmon looks really interesting to me, actually, as a kind of a ball playing, technically accomplished lad with plenty of pace. He's got a real, you say it quietly, but he's got that that Saliba thing about him, right? Against United, when I watched him, probably the only time I've watched him for 90 minutes at least, anyway. He was a real standout. So yeah, he looks like a real player. Dowman pretty much exactly the same. Again, I've seen him the United game like most of us. I think most of us all tuned in for that, and otherwise you've watched the highlights package of him and you've listened to the reports from George Bird and stuff like that. And he again looked comfortable. He wasn't going out there dominating the game like he was in the Youth Cup, because why would you expect him to do that? But he, again, you whisper it quietly, but he had that little bit of a feel of what you saw seeing Jack Wilshere play in a pre-season in 2007, I think it was 2008, maybe might be later than that actually. but yeah, has that sort of thing about him. He looks comfortable. He looks like he's a lad that is not very far off from being able to play at this level, and maybe is going to feel like he's even being held back a little bit by those he's playing around for the next couple of seasons. I think that might be the
Well,
truth for him.
I mean, because he's going to be playing with the under-21s now, and even
Yeah.
at 15, he's going to be the best player on the pitch. But that's even the fact that you're saying a 15-year-old is playing with the under-21s is that in itself. Ignore the first team. That in itself is 6 years above your age level, and that's just crazy.
You
And
remember when like Joe Cole was doing it, and it was
yeah,
a huge story, right? And
yeah,
now it does feel like we're producing more of these players at the Arsenal, and that's great. And
yeah,
there is talk though, apparently, isn't there, about the? And I wonder if it's more of a step towards anything of protecting our kind of player pathways and protecting that talent from going elsewhere. But apparently Arteta has been very much behind kind of reshaping the overall structure
hmm
of how those squads are organised, and
okay,
essentially bringing together one massive Arsenal squad more so than necessarily a defined under 21s and under 18s age groups, and
okay,
having those players interact. Arteta's always had a lot of kids around first team training, right? There's always
mm,
been a couple of selected lads. That has been Nwaneri and Lewis Skelly before, but it also as well he had a bunch of other lads who didn't really make a bit of a breakthrough, but would always have them around training and trying to get a feel for them. And I think the key thing with that is that you're getting them up there. Less so about progressing them probably in terms of skill, but that's, the skill work I think is still done at age group. But I think more
mm.
about the mentality, the experience, and the comfort,
And
and
physicality as well.
the
Just knowing what,
physicality. Yeah.
yeah, you're coming up against Gabriel. You don't come up against him in the under 15s.
And I
yeah,
think about setting expectations and culture,
yeah,
right? I think culture
yeah,
is a huge part of it.
mm,
And, we've seen, it's been interesting seeing a lot of the clips over the summer with MLS and Nwaneri sort of leading about the young lads around the training camp. And kind of it feels like there's a big emphasis on having a collective culture that runs through all of those kind of age groups. And
Well,
that I think is
it's like a mentoring system, like we would have at work and stuff like that. You have this mentoring thing, but it's nuts because MLS and Nwaneri have only just been in the team 6 months, or barely a season, and now Saka was doing it to them, and now it's Nwaneri and MLS doing it to the likes of Dowman and Salmon. I think it breeds a great culture, and what great role models to have, and you can see, well, look, this could be you. But it's weird. I mean, the one thing that stood out for me is that they come on, they didn't disrupt anything, they looked assured, and they didn't look out of place, and they were trusted because ball knows ball. And so when a player's not trusted is that they will never get past to. Doesn't matter. You'll be the one. Odegaard's got the ball. He'll look up. No, I'll go this way. There's that. Yeah. So they were that to me is what that's what stands out. But it's always dangerous. Again, you've got to remember these are 15-year-olds who know how they're going to develop. We've been here before to a certain extent with other players, and it just doesn't happen. And so it's just it's a careful balancing act, and everyone's got to just say it's brilliant, but my expectations are zero. And by that I mean his progression will be his progression. I'm not saying he should be playing first team football next season. If he does, it's because he's they say he's old enough and good enough. But also, is that the right thing? A bit like us managing Nwaneri towards the end of last season. That was maybe just because his body was growing, his body was developing, and physically we would have done him more damage by playing. So everyone's thinking, "Oh, get him on the pitch because he's a great player." Yeah, but the people looking with their due care and attention know more than us about how to look after growing boys,
But
aging
also
into their
just reset
bodies,
things a little bit, right?
and so on.
But
Hmm?
also just reset expectations sometimes, right?
Yeah, yeah,
There's. I mean, I trust these guys in the development of these young talents because we've now seen quite a few being really well managed and making a positive impact on the squad. So you just have to keep going with it, right? But yeah, I do think, and it's a great advert for the club, and it's a great advert for other youngsters going right the way and in future age groups that they have the opportunity to be around top players, to be around guys who've only just recently graduated Hale End but are making their own marks and getting their contracts, and and not say to everybody you need to run off to Old Trafford,
yeah.
or whoever else is
Or
looking
Or
at
Chelsea or whatever.
Chelsea or whoever,
Whatever.
But
Yeah,
certainly I think it's all very positive stuff,
Yeah,
and it's just good to see. So yeah, it was.
yeah.
It wasn't that they had highlights lit performances. It was just the
No,
fact that they were able, trusted, as you say, is a great thing to say in particular,
yeah,
and they
indeed.
were able to fit in. That's brilliant.
Yeah, yeah, and look, it's the good news around Nwaneri. Just going back to him, he's even though we haven't seen the shoulder on the arm, shoulder on the arm on the shoulder photo, and him signing the contract. By all intents and purposes, he signed, so that's down. And I don't think there were any issues there. I think it was just internet talk about potential. I'm sure others were interested. I just don't think it was ever going to go anywhere, and that's great. So we've got him down for 5 years now. So
Quite
that's
enjoyed. Did you see the Max Dowman dad's tweet as well with the
uh, I
we're Arsenal?
yeah,
Quite funny.
exactly. The thing is, we have to wait till he's not 16 until December, is it? I think something like that. Because that's when they can sign their first professional contract.
And even
So,
that's just pre-contract still. 17 is the age for the actual
oh,
contract, so you
wow,
can
okay,
agree a contract in principle after the age of 16,
right,
and then after that point they can sign it at
yeah.
17, but it's also limited. So you can only sign, I think it's a 2 or a
Yeah,
3.
up to 18, and that's where you have to renew at 18 or something like that.
Exactly.
Yeah,
So we kind of do, the ideal thing is not far off. I think MLS did the 16, did the 2 years, then at
yeah,
17, and then we renewed
yeah,
a year before that was going to expire, right? And
yeah,
it is difficult. It's hard to keep older players at that age.
yeah,
It's a good thing, I guess, because it stops the hoarding of put people on 5-year contracts at the age of
yeah,
16, and they stutter in reserves for years.
yeah,
But hopefully we can keep on doing the kind of business that we've done with MLS and Nwaneri as other players emerge.
yeah,
It's way too early to talk about that being a thing for Dowman or anybody
yeah,
else. But certainly that, again, it's having those right processes and those right ways of keeping players engaged at the club, that they want to be here and they're not looking
yeah.
elsewhere.
Yeah, look, all I can say is like Clive on the Arsenal Vision podcast called him the best 15-year-old in the world, so we better bloody keep him. There we go. uh, as for the rest of the game, yeah, look, we had some penalty fun at the end. I reckon that's mainly for the crowd. It's a bit of practice for the players, but you just can't replicate real life scenarios. So, some people were getting their knickers in a twist about certain players missing certain penalties, but it's just, it's like watching the training videos and they don't score every single time. So, like, I'm not, people will always find something to criticize. It's just, oh, that's interesting. Yeah, of course you want to win them, but I think Kepa, like you said at the beginning, he'll be a bit pissed off. What I say, 3 penalties and we still don't win the shootout. Uh, but another thing, talking of Dowman, Salmon, and the one, I'm sorry, he looks the youngest of them all, even though he's older, is Nichols, all stepping up to
Yeah,
take it.
Josh Nichols really does, doesn't he?
Oh
He
my
looks
god,
like a
he looks.
child out there.
He does really look. No, I'm sorry. No, that he looks younger than Dowman and Salmon, and he's 3 years older. But they all stood up to take a penalty, and again friendly. But the fact that there's seasoned pros said, "No, you go on after you miss." But yeah, look, no one's gonna hang anyone out to dry for
I mean,
for missing
it's
that.
an exhibition shootout,
Yeah,
isn't it? Who
yeah,
really cares, And
yeah,
maybe it's quite nice. They step up. They go, "Oh crap, I've missed my first ever senior penalty," and then you go, "Oh, I might go and work on that a bit."
yeah, exactly.
And to be frank, even then, I don't really care if a bunch of 15 and 18-year-olds work much on their penalty shootouts for the next little while.
No,
I don't think this is a major issue.
no, not at all, not at all. But I'm sure some people can make it into one. Um, so anyway, so that's that. Then next up is Newcastle on Sunday, Sunday lunchtime or early afternoon again. And look, the only interesting thing about that is all the talk about Isaac, whatever you want to call, whatever you name want to call him, or however you want to pronounce it, is like, from an Arsenal perspective, you just expect more of the same. I don't expect anything different, but yeah. What's your like? I think Ornstein tweeted yesterday that Isaac has announced that he wants to leave Newcastle United. He's absent from the Celtic friendly recently, and he's not on the tour at the moment. Whether that's from a mentality point of view or injury perspective, and yeah, he's basically saying he wants to go, and Newcastle are looking at potential replacements. Ironically, they're looking at Sesko. So yeah, what do you make of that?
I mean, I think I said quite a lot last season, didn't I? Whenever the question of Alexander Isaac came up, it's the only way he was going to move on is if he agitated for it. That's kind of the way things work when you're that highly valued a player on a multi-year contract. And there's a part of the fan base at the moment that's referring to the fact that we're tying up the Gyökeres deal and saying, could you do a U-turn? And we pulled the trigger too quickly on him, etc. Isaac has picked until now to come out and do this. It says to me that more than likely his agent's been talking to a bunch of clubs for quite some time. All of those clubs have been rebuffed by Newcastle, and he's felt the need to come out. The problem for him, I think, is that the clubs that wanted him are clubs that have proactively had a need and have gone and filled those needs. Liverpool with Ekiteke, fantastic name by the way. I'm not sure they are
Especially the way
going.
you pronounce it. Yeah,
Yeah, I don't think I'm going to have to find out what the right pronunciation is.
Ekitike. But
Ekiteke,
I prefer Ekiteki. That's
Ekiteke, I think it sounds great.
Ekitekas. There we go.
Yeah,
That's his
exactly.
nickname.
Ekitekas. So, Ekitekas at Liverpool seems to have, they've got him. They're not able to move on Darwin Núñez anywhere. And so,
Yeah.
I doubt that they are in the market. It seems like it's been reported they are, they very much wanted him. They didn't get anywhere positive, so they disappeared off and got someone else. Same things happened with us. He went in as our number one target for the summer, I think was widely reported. Very quickly established that a deal just wasn't likely. And hence it just feels like there's a bit of a strange one on Alexander Isak's side where he might have kind of got a bit desperate. He always wanted these moves. His agent's been talking to the clubs, and he should have put the pressure on Newcastle a lot earlier, effectively. And I think more than likely we could well be seeing him in Arsenal. We very likely could have been seeing him in a Liverpool shirt. Maybe that was more likely overall, but where he could go to now. I mean, there's clubs that could afford him, and there's clubs that he would want to go to that would be a step up to, right? I mean, it's going to be difficult for him, I would imagine, because there's just not that many clubs out there with the financial clout to be able to bring in an Alexander Isak, and presumably as well, I have no doubt some of that is him wanting a big wage increase. I know he's only on, he's reported at least anyway, he's still on the 100k that he signed there, which is
Wow.
for the type of player he is. As much as it's a massive amount of money for the quality of player he is, it's not a huge amount.
Well, yeah. This is
Comparatively.
this is the thing. I mean, the timing is bizarre because, and also, we would have known all about this behind it. Just because we're just hearing about it, I'm sure Arsenal, Liverpool, whoever would have known about the scenario ages ago. They talk and stuff, so it's not news to anyone. So the timing is a bit bizarre given it. So in terms of, there's a couple of things. So if he's genuinely agitating for a move, then for me, if Liverpool move on Elliott maybe for 40 million, Diaz to Bayern Munich for 70, and Núñez to Saudi for 50, all of a sudden, do they use that money to pay for what they've already bought? Remember, they didn't do any business last year apart from Chiesa, which doesn't count. So maybe they've got some spare cash, or do they put it towards getting an Isak? Don't know. Chelsea potentially, they're daft enough to do it, where they would want to go to Chelsea. And as for us, well, look, I think we always said, would we want a saga and wait till the end of the summer and potentially miss out on Isak, or get a striker in? So we've got our striker in now. Yes, that's turned into more of a saga than it needs to be, but so what? He's practically in just as preseason started. So we all said we'd rather get the business done than wait, because Newcastle will not make this easy. This would drag on, and so on and so on. So yeah, something smells iffy. For me, I think it's more likely, as you've said, if they're valuing him at 130, 150 million, pay him the wages of 130, 150 million pound player. Yeah, so he's most probably just agitating for that to say, look, just pay me
But
what
maybe
I'm
also
worth.
it's a desperate move at the end of it to go, do you know what? I really wanted one of the big clubs to come and take me.
Yeah, but it's too late
Um, I'm
potentially.
treading water here at Newcastle from a contractual perspective. I don't
Yeah.
want to commit to more. Tell you what, I'll go over to Al Riyadh for a year, and I'll have a
Maybe.
year going and playing in the Saudi. Because what we have seen there is, generally most of the big signings they make, they don't stay there for the length of the contract. Ultimately, they go out there, they earn a huge amount of money for a year, and then it's easier to get back out of there again because that club will they don't really care about the money. They take back what they spent. They go and get somebody else.
Well, they're just
It's
giving the
almost,
money to themselves anyway, isn't it? So
I think it's kind of what it's looking like for a certain class of player. There's a lot of talk about how difficult it is to move top players around in the world of financial fair play and all that kind of stuff. And what's happened in particular to those players that are at those upper middle tier clubs, that actually they're some of the hardest to move around because they're at a club that are not massively benefiting from their sale quite often, that find it quite difficult to replace them, and then going to clubs that then at the same time need a lot of financial planning because of FFP now to be able to bring them in. So I wonder if that's maybe what happens with a few of these types of players is that they end up making those moves over to the likes of Saudi, and then effectively they're almost in a bit of a holding state for a year. It's kind of earn a load of money, recharge your batteries playing in a bit of a NAF league, do a bit of Club World Cup, and then come back to a top club, or have more of a range of options afterwards because teams are in a better position to be able to negotiate with some of those Saudi clubs, because as yet, at least anyway, we haven't seen the Saudis try and keep a hold of anybody. Doesn't seem like it's something that bothers them much. It's kind of all a bit easy come, easy go. Whether that's really the case, I don't know. But it is one thing I wonder about. It's kind of pure speculation, but it would make sense to me as well that if he genuinely is like, I'm kind of checked out the project now, I've publicly let it be known, that he goes, look, give me 300k, give Newcastle the money they want, and I'll come over for a year. And we'll reevaluate after that, But I think he probably is looking at the Newcastle, and maybe a part of that is looking at what Newcastle have done this summer too, and they've not really done a great
well,
deal.
everyone's. Well, was it?
Everybody keeps going elsewhere.
Not is it Malanga? Oh, I've forgotten. Is it Elanga? Sorry, Elanga from Forest. That's about it. But yeah, no, people seem to be turning them down, going other places. But yeah, look, let's see. It could be like, let's renew the contract, put 300 in, put a release clause in, and let me go next year. I'll play Champions League one more year, and let me go. So, I mean, from an Arsenal perspective, I just cannot, unless we were to sell, and I wouldn't do this, sell Trossard and sell Martinelli is the only way I think we could get him. And even then, it's just not our style, because in a way, okay, we've just bought Gyökeres, we've got Havertz, it just doesn't fit. And then, look, it's not our job to make it fit, but we would then have no left-hand side. Yeah, so apart from Madueke, who's more right-sided than left-sided, but we'll talk about that in a minute. So I just cannot see it happening from an Arsenal perspective. The only team I think that could get him would be Liverpool. Otherwise, I just think upgrade the contract, give him more money, and then you can let him go next year, and we take it from there. But yeah, interesting times for Newcastle. That is. But yeah, again, Arsenal fans losing their heads. Oh, why? Bin off Gyökeres, let's get him, because it's that easy. Because that's how it works.
I still worry about. I still had some reservations about him anyway, mainly because of the injuries, and it is it's always been a concern for me that his availability has never been that great. And when you are in the position that we were in, where you needed to go and get yourself the 9 that's going to be available for you a lot of that time, it still would always be my concern where he come into is that if it's different if you can get hold of the guy for the money that even Gyökeres is we're talking about, right? But when you do that signing, we wouldn't have got another one of the players that we got. Probably more than likely, maybe it was Madueke, and we don't get. He feels like he might be the most superfluous, but we certainly wouldn't have got Gyökeres with him, right? You're getting one striker for that money, and for me, that's always been a bit of a concern. It's just he hasn't had a season of being injury free since.
Don't come to Arsenal if you want to be injury free.
And even his last season at Sociedad was like that, right? So you've just got to be, he's a fantastic player, and he reminds me of Thierry, and it makes you fall in love, right? And I would absolutely be massively positive at the signing were we to ever have made it, but I can't see us doing it, and I certainly can't see us doing it where I think in general that price tag just would always worry me about it. It is something that I've thought about him in the past. So being in the position where we've gambled on Gyökeres, and I'm really positive about him and what he's going to bring, I can quite happily look over and see some of the less advantageous points about Alexander Isak, and that's probably one of them.
Yeah, and absolutely. And look, yeah, that leads us very nicely into someone who is, we believe, following in Henri's footsteps and is going to take the number 14 shirt. So that's definitely means Isak is not coming. It seems like it's done. The green only M&Ms and Skittles riders has all been resolved, and we finally. I had here almost nearly practically have our man, but today, a couple of hours ago, we had the Orm bomb. Arsenal reached total agreement with Sporting Lisbon to sign Viktor Gyökeres. Sporting CP grant 27-year-old striker permission to travel. Medical scheduled for Saturday. Sweden international expected to wear iconic number 14 shirt as new AFC frontman
He'll
at
be
the
disappointed
Atletico.
in that. I wanted him to be in the 9. Did you not?
Is that free? 9?
Who's in the 9 at the moment?
Yeah, it it strikes me that it should be free, but it isn't. No, it strikes me that it is free, but it strikes me it shouldn't be free. I don't know. You'd have to have a quick look.
Gabriele Jesus. It's Gabriele.
There, well, there you go. Well,
Yeah,
there you go. The
Jesus.
forgotten man. There you go.
Yeah. I mean, it's a bit of a
Yeah,
shame. But I mean,
I think
14 is a great number for us, I know.
yeah,
But I did like the idea of, like, now that we finally got the 9, put him in the bloody
yeah.
9. You know what I mean?
So it looks like it is happening. We've got him. So we finally got our man. And look, yeah, I think we've all every podcast under the sun and we talked about him for ages. And look, we seem to have now a proper striker, our first proper striker since I don't know.
Well, I mean, Pierre-Emerick
Oli-
Aubameyang.
about I guess Aubameyang. Yeah, I guess I was going to say maybe Giroud, but yeah, Aubameyang. And look,
Yeah, I know what you mean. As an all-round centre forward, you're
yeah,
probably
I was going to
talking.
say since Alan Smith. There
I
you go.
mean,
Someone
Christ
who's
on a
just
bike, mate. You're reaching a bit there to say that the likes of Ian Wright or even John Arson or even,
yeah,
Christ, there's
maybe.
been a lot since
Yeah.
then, mate. Yeah, all right.
No, true. But look, someone who is just sole thought is to shoot and score goals and which is nice to see. I mean, look, he averages, was it about 3.5 shots per game, 60% of which are on target. So both those numbers together are pretty good. So even if he doesn't score, he could create havoc, create something different, just do something that different that we don't have. He scored 92 goals in the last couple of seasons, I believe, and look, doesn't matter what league you're in. If you're playing in European League, Western Europe, that's still impressive. And no, he basically sees goals, see goal, hit ball hard. Yeah, So maybe not great at heading, but we can work on that one. But yeah, he's a bit of a monster. He's a bit of a beast. He can ragdoll defenders. He's got a tremendous work rate from what I can hear, from what I understand. Yeah, and look, even if we just get 15 to 20 goals out of him, I'll be happy with that. That's a great return. So, any thoughts, anything further to add?
Nah, look, we talked about him loads, right? I'm really enthusiastic about it. I think he's the right profile, right kind of player. There's adaptation for him to make. There is big change in going from the Portuguese league to going to the Premier League. Standard's one of them, but I've seen him be really good in the Champions League. We've seen him score a hat trick against Man City, right? We've seen him play for Sweden over a bunch of time, and even though the Sweden stuff might not be that he's always playing the greatest teams in international football half the time, you're also playing for a team that's not that great. Sweden are
Yeah,
not a particularly brilliant side at the moment, and he scores goals for them. So he just seems like a really instinctual, quite clever striker with a bit of pace, bit of power. And again, same thing, trust our guys to be able to get what they need out of those raw talents, because, that's seemingly what Arteta's very good at doing, to me, is getting, they identify the right players, they get them in, and they use their attributes very well. And it's very rare, apart from when we've had kind of very obvious stopgap players in the Arteta reign, that he hasn't been able to bring somebody in and get real value out of them and what they're able to provide for the team. So for me, really excited. I think, having a proper 9, especially with the supporting cast having got so much better as well.
yeah.
I think for me, I'll look at it and I'm super excited, and I'm kind of betting the bank on us getting 15 league goals at least out of him, and seeing him have a real impact on the team.
Yeah, I was just thinking in my head about players. Maybe I think he's most like RVP in a way. Hopefully, not as much of an ass, but in terms of hitting the ball hard, just direct, lots of shooting. Again, needs to work on his heading, but so yeah. And look, hopefully he gets out to Singapore to join the boys or Hong Kong just to get settled in. Maybe have some minutes. And kick the shit out of Tottenham in Hong Kong. So yeah, it would have been nice to get this done earlier, but you know, Sporting aren't the easiest to deal with. But we've got our man, and yeah, I'm excited. I'm
Still
excited
July,
about
right?
this.
Still
Yeah,
July. There's plenty of
yeah,
time, and
yeah,
there's bedding to be done over the first few games
yeah,
anyway. And also, I do genuinely think, to return to a point that we made earlier on about the big man, Kai Havertz,
mm,
he's still actually got to fight for that position.
yeah,
He's got to make himself the number 9, because we actually, I do feel like people forgot during the time that Kai was injured last season that we had a good 9.
yeah,
We had a good 9 at the start of the season. We had a good 9 at the end of the previous season. You
mm,
know, we always wanted an extra. We always felt it wasn't
yeah,
enough, and we always wanted some competition. But he's still got to prove himself there. And Kai Havertz was a very good 9 for
yeah,
a period of time, where we were even talking about him being one of the best 9s in the Premier League.
mm,
And actually, it's great to have the option between the two of them. One of them's going to be the more dominant than the other. Kai obviously is also naturally able to play midfield and has played there, more over his career. But I'm fully expecting to potentially see a position where over the first couple of months of the season, we're seeing the two of them share a lot of time,
yeah,
and
yeah.
and try and push each other, I think. And
Mm.
who knows, this could be a really massive season for Kai on top of that as well.
Yeah, well, yeah, he'll have to raise his game and stuff. Look, I would fully expect Kai to be our starting centre forward at the beginning of the season, and then we'll see. But it's great to have the option. This is the thing: we just didn't have the options off the bench, or we just didn't have that, you know, seagull
We
hit
could
ball hard.
occasionally see two now. You know what I
Yeah,
mean? Like the options
exactly.
there, right? Which
It's
is
great.
is absolutely legit. Whether that be an in-game decision or whether that be even one prior to a game, the
Yeah,
potential's there to be able to do it and to mix things up. And the supporting cast having got so much stronger this season in midfield and in those attacking areas, just the range of options available to us now. It just feels like this is the strong. This is by far the most depth I think we've had since. I would say at this stage we've well surpassed the 09-10 team, and we're
yeah,
going right the way back to like the Invincibles. Basically, I don't.
yeah.
I'm not saying it's as good a squad, but it
No,
is the most
well,
depth we've had since then.
well. Remember, the Invincibles were relying on was it Segan, Pascal Segan, in times, and just various other players that were not the greatest.
Not
Um,
as bad a player as people. I will debate at length
no,
this.
no, but
Pascal
what I mean
Groom's
is
not
like
a
yeah,
player. I get
but we still had to rely on him, and even look, Edu was a classy player, but he was still second fiddle to some of those players and stuff like that. So we still even Will Tord and stuff like that. So
But we had
we had
strength then. We've got strength and depth
yeah,
now, and I think that
yeah,
it does make me. There's not been, I think, a time over the last 20 years, which is what is it, 21, 22 years now. In 22 seasons, there's no time like now where I'm
well,
looking at our second 11, and I'm saying our second 11
yeah.
can
Well,
go and win a lot of games. That's the
well,
thing. It really does feel like you could put them out as a team, and that is a hell of a strong lineup in the Premier League.
Well, look, we're gonna talk about this later about a bit that Arteta talked about in a recent press conference about tiering, or he used to looking at tier one, tier two, tier three players. But we'll talk about it in the middle, but it touches on that point. But also, and on to the next topic. Just to start it off, Netford. That's two players. That's one. That's two goalkeepers in one. Neto, Setford, Tierney, White, Zinchenko, Trossard, Jorginho, Sterling, Calafiori, Butler, Oyedeji, Henry Francis, Nwaneri. That was our bench for I think the semi-final. I can't remember if it was home or away against Paris Saint-Germain in Paris. So it was for the second leg. That was our bench, and
Yeah,
and so you're right. Our strength and depth, and part of that. That depth and that strength. And who signed last week is Noni Madueke. Um, and again, I'm actually really excited about this one. Maybe this is also part of my nature that if someone's negative about something, I will always try and find the positive side of things. If the club do something that gets a negative reaction, I'll try and find a positive reaction to it. So there's an element of my personality around being excited and wanting him to do well. But I'm genuinely not down on this. If he was arriving from Brentford or Bournemouth or West Ham, people I think would be a lot more excited. There's the Chelsea factor, there's the Chelsea fatigue. But if you look at him compared to Semenyo, Mbeumo, Kudus, his stats stack up are even better. So there's a lot of baggage there that is giving him an unfair, which has died down now. But that stupid petition, which God's sake, it's just people looking for attention, and I just thought it's just over the top, and look, and in terms of value, I've heard accounts that we actually we got it down from 60 to 50 because they were looking at the Elanga 55 and Kudus 60, and look, Mbeumo went for 71. He's not worth 71. He massively overperformed his XG, so he's a good player, but he's not £71 million player, and his wages are relatively low. We split that over 4 or 5 years, and you're playing 10 million a year, 12 million a year for a raw talent, potential 23. I think that's decent business. So if people actually put some critical thinking against something rather than just the emotional, aesthetic reaction, you would see, I think, that this is a good deal. Well, for me, I think it is.
It's an outstanding signing, I think, personally, for the money as well. And I honestly, I think a huge amount of that criticism is literally to do with the fact it's come from Chelsea.
Yeah.
And the fact that people have really enjoyed taking the mick out of Chelsea, and then at the same time we've also had that history of transfers with them, which I still say as well is ridiculous to refer back to anyway, because we've also had some really bloody good signings from Chelsea. We just talked about Kai, we talked about Jorginho. To be honest, I'd even had Willie Gallas in there. He's one of the best centre-halves I've seen play at the Arsenal. Was he a complete and utter twat? Absolutely. But he was also in a team full of complete and utter twats at the time as well.
And look, we would have won the league. We would have won the league with him.
Even
because we would have won the league, but it was an injury to, forgotten his name. That scuppered Eduardo. Yeah, so he would have been part of a league-winning team.
It was, there is. I understand the fatigue to a certain extent, but also as I think a couple of pods ago we talked about it and we said about players moving to Fulham from us, and the ease with which a lot of players are looking to be able to move clubs from a more practical level that we forget about. The people coming across from West London to North London, not moving house, not moving their kids' school, etc. absolutely works for some players. So there is an ease with which you can probably do these deals, but Madueke, to me, regardless of all that, the price tag looks really good for a player of his ability. His stats stack up really well. He's proven in the Premier League. He's an England international, and he's another one of those that, from everything you hear, is a bit of a culture monster, and seems like he's the right kind of fit for the Arsenal and where we are at the moment. And again, and I also really, I find it quite interesting with him too. We got that Saka backup, but from a guy that has quite a bit of versatility, who's played about 60% of his games for Chelsea have been right wing, but he's also spent a lot of time playing striker, attacking midfield, a left wing as well. And personally, I've seen him play left wing, really bloody good there, and he's played there for England. He got switched wings when he played for England. The one time I watched him, played right and then played left. I think that's really exciting too, and I love the actual specific profile that he is, of being really direct, of really liking his take-ons, of being really quite successful in his take-ons. And in particular, I think, funnily enough, it seems like some of the folks that have been against the sign have also some that are most vocal about Gabby Martinelli. And, I've always said I certainly say I do think he's plateaued a bit in terms of development.
Yeah.
He had a good end of last season, I thought, putting some really good contributions, but I still think he's not ever quite lived up to what we wanted. But Madueke specifically does things that people moan about about Martinelli not doing. He specifically loves take-ons. He gets his shots off, and he's ambitious with his play. And they're the things that I always get worried about Gabby. The talent's there. I always feel like he doesn't do enough. He doesn't use the talent often enough. and Madueke seems like he's happy to do that. So yeah, explosive, exciting, attacking talent. What's not
Yeah.
to like?
I mean, having him on the left, look, I think he adds a bit of chaos, which we don't have. I mean, Arteta's control, maybe it's something different to what we don't have. Arteta likes to control things. He offers something different. I would like to see him on the left because then we can attack. He won't cut inside. He'll attack. He'll attack the box. He'll be direct. He wants, as you said, he wants to take on his man. So again, something that we don't have. Look, the proof will be in the pudding where we see him in the flesh. And I think if he performs well, everyone's going to like him. If he doesn't perform well, then the grace, some people give more grace than others. But like he's saying about his metrics, he's in the Premier League, he's in the top 97% percentile for non-penalty XG, in the top 97 percentile for open play shots. His shot accuracy and etc. And just the shot usage, XG, blah 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 blah. They've got a number of stats here, courtesy of Canon Stats, that just put him up there as a really good, attacking unit. And he's still young, still got loads of time to develop. Um, and so I think we can take advantage of that. And you get him in. He's not the finished article, but you put him in the hands of Arteta and that lot. And then let's see what happens. Look, I'm sure he's going to frustrate and he's going to give the ball away a lot, and he's not going to find the player a lot. But he's a player that keeps trying, and the more times you try something, the more times you're going to likely something's going to come off. And I hope he doesn't then lose that. But then also, what was interesting as well, and talking about the online stuff and the reaction, was Rice in an interview recently. He was actually talked out about it and said, look, in the interview, he said, and this was in the Athletic, said, look, there's obviously been a lot of talk around this signing. I don't like it, if I'm speaking honestly, but I know how driven he is. I've spoken to him, and you're going to see what he's about this season. As football players and players that have played with him, we know the quality he has. So look, obviously he's going to talk him up, but also, I don't think he's BSing us either. And he goes on to say, look, he's so driven, he's proven, he wants to prove and show everyone what he can do. And I think we're going to see that there's a hunger inside his belly, etc., etc., etc. So I think, there's a lot of positives. Yeah, even the England international bit, I think he'll fit in nicely with the boys. You've got the Spanish contingent. I don't think we're going to have that. You lot over there, us lot over here. But the fact that you've got players that he knows from England, he's got a good mate in Rice there. I'm sure some
Homegrown as well.
homegrown for the
For the
Premier League,
Premier
but
League,
not
yeah,
but not the Champions League.
yeah.
But so yeah, yeah. Look, let's wait and see. But I'm not down on this at all. I'm actually really excited to see him play and get on with it. So let him rest up after that nonsense in the US, and then get him on and see what happens, because we don't have this profile. And
No,
and as I said, if you
it's
think
got a
about
bit of
great,
the Trossard about it for me in the impact that he could have. If you look at the impact that Trossard had when he came in initially, and he gave us something a little bit different that we've been lacking. And you know, I think I'm really really positive about it. I think he could be eye test wise mainly. Every time Chelsea have played us for about the last 2.5 years now, 3.5, I suppose. He's been there quite a while, actually. I
yeah.
keep forgetting because there was a picture in the Athletic that took me by surprise because it was Declan Rice in a West Ham shirt taking him on with him playing Chelsea, and I'm there
Did he play
going.
for West Ham? I didn't remember.
Well, I mean, honestly, it's hard to bloody remember, isn't it? I don't want to remember a time without Declan Rice. I don't want to think of a time without Declan Rice. In all honesty, that took me by surprise somewhat. But I think it was his second game for Chelsea, and he arrived in the winter. But he ever since he's been there and played against us, he's always been the one that's caught my eye when we've played them in recent years. He's got a real, there's a real verve about his play that I really enjoyed seeing, and he's got this kind of real directness. So that's limited. I haven't watched every Chelsea game ever.
No, of
And his
course.
stats, as you say, have their great points. They also have their holes. It suggests that he can be a little bit more clinical.
Yeah.
And clearly, he's not the best player in the Premier League that we got and signed, and was going to be probably their third choice winger. But I think what we've gone and done is just gone and acquired a guy who is in the right position right now to potentially kick on, and even if he doesn't, is going to be a really good option for us for a substantial period of time. And that's a good place to be. And to be honest, it feels like a massively upgraded Reece Nelson to a certain extent. might be the player that I always wanted Reece Nelson to be.
Yeah,
But that no shade against Reece Nelson, but he's kind of in that position where he's had a much better career than him at the age of 23 than what Reece has had at 25, and where we maybe hoped when Reece signed that contract that he signed at the time that he was going to kick on and be this guy who was going to be able to play a bit of both wings and be a real, be a really impactful substitute at times and so on. We haven't got that out of Reece. We hopefully will get out of this guy, and if he then kicks
yeah,
on to be even better, great.
yeah. No, I think with Reece it might have been a mentality thing rather than a ability thing. Just I think he was just always too safe. He was always didn't want to take that risk, and I don't think we're going to get that with Madueke. I think Madueke is just ready to just fine. I'll keep going. I'll keep going. If at first I don't succeed, try again. So I think let's see what happens. Anyway, so excited. Look, we've got about 10 minutes left. Or try and wrap this up in 10 minutes. We also we had the news yesterday, and we saw the signing of Christian Mosquera, and that's going to be hard to spell every time because he's put the H in the wrong place. But yeah, he's our fifth confirmed signing of the summer, costing around 15 million once you include all the add-ons. And yeah, I think this is another good solid purchase. It's again on the scale that we're buying our top tier players in the likes of Gyökeres, we're getting our squad players in, and then we're getting our developmental players in as well. So he joins from Valencia. He's ostensibly meant to be the right centre back up behind Saliba, but he can play right back, left centre back. He can play in the middle of a three. He can also play left back. So, he strengthens our defensive options, and more importantly, he will be able to give Willow a break when we go up north to play some small team in the third round of the Carabao Cup, or if we get an easy FA Cup draw. So yeah, I think again another sensible, smart signing. He's 21, and even at the age of 21, he's played a really lot of games. I think since August 2023, he's played 70. He played 70 out of 72 La Liga games for Valencia, and he's played more minutes than any other under 21 player across the whole of Europe. So he's young but experienced. Played in the top league, not for a great team, but he was an ever present to all the intents and purposes. And look, we were looking to get Huijsen from Bournemouth, but hey, we saved the money and we got someone for a third of the price and freed up funds for and wages for someone else. So yeah, what are your thoughts?
Looks good. A lot of that is relying just on reports and little bits and kind of stuff that's been put together. But looks like he's a strong, athletic, fast centre half with a real thing for ones, right? That sounds great. That sounds brilliant. That sounds exactly like the centre halves that we really love to see at the Arsenal. So yeah, young lads and a bit more squad depth whilst also having a load of room for development. Sounds like a good one to me. It'd be interesting to see how they manage him over the next couple of years. And, is he someone who's going to have a loan spell at some point, like Billy Saliba? You kind of see that for centre halves that you maybe want to get them a little bit more game time than you necessarily elsewhere, because you don't tend to switch in a centre half at on 70 minutes or throw them in for anything but a cup tie, really, right? It is a bit more of a structured, linear kind of development path normally for them. So yeah, just really interested to see what he'll bring. But it feels like it's an intelligent signing. We've got him reasonably cheap for his age and his talent profile, and hopefully it works out. But it's one of those as well where I think a lot of these guys at this kind of age, you can accept that you're taking a bit of a gamble. It's Albert Sambi Lakonga. We took a gamble, probably didn't develop or move in the right direction. Seems like he might have he might not be the kind of player who's going to kick on and be at a top club. And maybe you get that out of some of these guys that you're taking £10 million gambles on, or 15 or whatever it might have been. But your reasonable amount of money. But hopefully you get a guy that is going to push on.
Yeah, I mean, I think having played 70 odd games in the last 2 years for Valencia, I think that's less of a gamble. You're getting something. But you're right; it's interesting to
For a
see.
young lad, isn't it? He does seem
Yeah,
that does excite me quite a lot that he's been playing that much football for a top flight team.
Yeah, but the interesting thing is you go from that to now you're just going to be a, yeah, it sounds bad, a bit part player, just an occasional player. So how do you carry on with your development? But maybe that's what it's like. Maybe he was ahead of the game at 21, and maybe this will slow it down a bit. Maybe this will give his body time to recover, or something like that. Because we always talk about, like, overplaying, and if you played that many games already by 21, you're on course for Sterling levels of fall off.
But
To
at a top class club, and
yeah,
apparently with the ability to be able to play a bit of right back as well,
yeah,
and able to learn from Ben White, from Gabriel, from Saliba.
exactly.
You
Yeah,
are looking at, and Julian Timber, even, who's not that
yeah,
much older, but
yeah.
um, you're in an environment and a bunch of coaches, and we probably underrate this a lot of the time as well. Working with coaches that have coached those guys to be top class, because Gabriel was not, the most formed over
No.
signing in the world when we got him from Lille, and had only played about 50 games of French league football. The you know William Saliba was still a young lad, even if he was massively well rated. And I know he did a lot of his development away from the club, but he's improved during the time he's been there. Ben White has stepped up. Julian Timber has stepped up from where he was at Ajax. These are these coaches that we have that will invest time into him are undoubtedly top coaches at a big club, and the combination of all those factors, I'm sure he's looking at and saying, look, I've got plenty of game time under me. The next step now is probably that the expectations out of what I can deliver are raised by those around me, and I'm pushed by those around me, and I'm developed by those around me. And hopefully he embraces that, and he does a job. I'm sure he's not coming in and thinking he's going to take the place of
No,
Ethan and Gabriel. It's
I think he
not
knows
the
what he's
job we're
coming
going
into.
to be sold to him, is it?
Yeah, yeah,
But being told you're going to come and be a part of this
yeah.
club that's had the best defence in Europe for the last 3 years, which I
It's
think we
not,
have.
yeah, not a bad place to be. And
Come
look,
and learn your trade, mate.
yeah, look, we don't know a lot about him, but from the scouting reports I've watched, seen, read, whatever, yeah, he's physical. He's a bit of an irritant. I love irritants because that's the sort of centre forward I was. So anyone that just annoys your opposition trying to mark you is great for me. Putting off forwards, he's good in the tackle, good on ground duels. I said he's speedy like Saliba, comfortable on the ball. His main weakness is his heading and aerial duels, but that's something we can work on because that was Saliba's weakness as well. So I said it seems like we've signed an excellent young prospect with a load of experience and will and should improve, and someone Valencia I don't think wanted to get rid of and lose, because if you saw their farewell on social media, it was very functional, very curt, and very unemotional. So it was yeah, I'm not sure they were happy about that, but yeah, again, another good purchase, because it's not always about the here and now. It's often you always have to think about the future. Um, Another sort of signing, they found some loose change down the back of the sofa. We got Will Wright from Salford City. Apparently, we beat Liverpool to the punch on that one. He's a tall centre forward. You never know what you're going to get with these guys. It's a bit of a punt, and the worst case scenario is that it's speculative, and we sell him on for a bit of profit later on. Who knows? Could turn into something. Could turn into something not. Liverpool were looking into him, so it's not like there weren't other clubs who could see his future. And
It
so
seems
look,
like
that
they've done a few over the summer, haven't they? Kind of fillers
yeah,
in the youth, in the under 18s and under 21s. I know there's a bit of a gap in the age group where there's been obviously the promotion of some of the best players that are in the youth groups through the ranks, and there's also been a bunch of lads that have left, like um, Salahuddin M. Hand, who
yeah,
I'm never always confident in myself with that one, and a few of the other boys that were kind of slightly more senior chaps who were never really bothering the step up, but ultimately have been actually allowed to leave the club this season. So
yeah,
I think there's been a couple of guys come in where they seem like they've actually taken a fee to get them into the club. They might be quite exciting, but the main thing is as well, you kind of forget sometimes you do need to fill a few gaps at the under 21 level just to make them
well,
functional and to help develop those around them.
yeah, exactly,
And that's been the
exactly.
approach that has been taken a lot of the time that Per's been here. So be an interesting one though, because by all accounts, he had options throughout his youth career. Very much
Yeah.
chose to be where he was and turned down several clubs until this point, and now feels it's the right time to further his development. So if he's a Micah Beereth, for instance, then you can get quite happy about it.
Yeah, exactly. So there we go. Let's just see. And so look, just in terms of the pod, we want to finish off, and just this one thing that came up, and it came up from Arteta's press conference in Singapore about tiered squads and tiered squads no more. So like, it's an interesting topic around the hierarchy of the squad and the players, and I think we're making a change for the good and moving away, and in essence the idea being that you'd have certain players that were sort of like, if they're always going to be guaranteed starters, or they're always going to be like, first name on the team sheets types, and then you'd have your tier 2 and tier 3 sort of level, so sort of decreasing in priority or seniority or whatever, because it'd even be the case like, if you're tier 1 and you're 70% fit, you're still going to play over someone who's a tier 2 who's 100% fit. But obviously, as we've learned to our detriment, that is not sustainable, and potentially it's been a fault or a blind spot of Arteta's for the last few seasons, and people have put it as part of the blame as why we got the injuries last season. He doesn't rotate more, doesn't sub players in that more, he doesn't trust his squad enough. So, but as can be seen by the business that we're doing this year, that we're looking to strengthen the depth, strengthen the quality. So it's not just about numbers, it's the quality of those numbers. And I even alluded to that in terms of transfer businesses, and we need to do more in terms of getting more quality in. Even though he said the word numbers, I think he meant quality. So look, just to pull out some quotes from his interview, he said tier 1 means that they have the capacity to be starters, basically. The tier 1, 2, 3 system, I don't believe in that much now. The way the game's evolving, the demand is that we put in with 70, 75 games per season. At the end, we want to build a team like other clubs already have, where we look at the squad and you cannot really identify who is going to play tomorrow. If we get to that point and that competitiveness has, as well as the right level of cooperation between the players, that's what we want. So what are your thoughts about this sort of realization, maybe, or appreciation that we need to be better at squad utilization, in essence?
It makes sense, right? And I mean, I don't for a minute doubt that he'd always like to have had a squad like that, but
Mm,
the necessity for it feels like it's where we are now, and some of that would have been the learning that he's done as a manager, managing the team that have had the workload that we've had for the past 2 seasons, and especially last season. Last season was the greatest workload on an Arsenal squad in a very, very, very long time, and there would have been some lessons learned around that, I'm sure, for Mikel, and some lessons learned about, as we've said before, players he can trust, players he can't, and so yeah, I can. What is quite interesting about it was the fact that he kind of very much alluded to other teams having already done that, and kind of saying, look, we are behind other clubs in that respect.
mm,
That's quite an admission, I think.
mm,
So yeah, and it makes sense for the recruitment we've done. We've said this all the way through. These guys that are being recruited this season, they don't feel like nobody's a Sterling, right?
mm,
Nobody is nobody's even a Jorginho. I don't think
mm,
even Norgaard for me isn't necessarily a Jorginho of stick him in for now, get a little bit done. Everybody has got a role and a competitive edge, and there might be multiple players in certain positions, but a lot of them actually give him more optionality because they're slightly different profiles. The you know the signings of both Norgaard and Zubimendi are good examples of that. He hasn't signed a mini Zubimendi to back up Zubimendi. It's not a tier 2 player that comes in when Zubimendi's hurt. He's given himself a different option. Another guy that has been a starting player in the Premier League for a bunch of seasons now and been praised for it. So yeah, for me, it's a really it's good to see him publicly acknowledge that and talk his way
mm,
through that. And I'm sure it would be very well received in the squad because players aren't afraid of competition. Players that are in those spots of competing for places where they haven't had as much game time before get that sort of reassurance that if you're available, you're there for selection, then potentially you're going to get the call. So yeah, it's great, and hopefully it helps us just be more competitive on all fronts. And the more time that players do spend in the team, certainly to the start of the season, the more that you can rely on them throughout it as we move on. And
well, that's the thing. It's about being fresh at winning season, being fresh in March, April, May.
yeah,
The last few seasons, you can just see it. We hit a wall just a few games too early than we need to, and we're literally just hanging on by our fingernails. And you can see the difference between someone like PSG. Now they're fresher for a different reason, but just being fresh at that part of the season massively helps. And you could see about their front line, they got like 5 players that they could interchange easily. You don't know which winger's going to turn up on which game and who's going to play where. For the likes of PSG. So yeah, and in terms of referring to other teams, yes, of course, he's talking about Man City, Liverpool a bit, that sort of thing. And yeah, so I think it's about not dropping the quality. And it's not just about starting, it's also about coming off after 60, 70, so someone can, like, you have your starters and your finishers and whatever. So it's just keeping that squad fresh, keeping people available. Injuries will happen. You can't negate that, but trying to mitigate as much as possible. And well, this is part of learning. This is part of, and I think you're right. I think he's always wanted to do this. It just takes time to build that squad, and he did what he did at the beginning just to get us to a position, and everything gets you to a level. Now we're at this level. This is where he can now take it to this squad, sort of like egalitarian squad from a quality level, whereas beforehand he's just had to do what he had to do to get us to the level where we are. Now we're in this position, and I don't think we're dropping away from it. Now he says, right, now we're here. This is what I now need to ensure that we're fresh and can win things at the right time, and we have the players that we need at the right time. So I think he's had to cut his cloth accordingly. Part of that has been the club, the way they invest and what they've needed to do, but it's hard to tell behind the scenes. But I think it's a step definitely in the right direction, and should hope lead us to being better off come those, let's say, winning months in April and May. So yeah, let's fingers crossed. It's
and so far, we've added and not lost this summer, right? I mean,
yeah,
if anything, it feels like we probably should be trying to get rid of a few of the deadly
yeah,
ones. There are players in the
yeah,
Arsenal squad now that don't feel like they have any place because they
yeah.
have been, I'm thinking primarily of probably Vieira and Zinchenko more than anyone else.
And
But,
Nelson, yeah, those three,
and Nelson,
Lokonga,
I think those
those,
three more so. But
yeah,
we if you look in terms of meaningful losses, there's been two of them
no,
from a foot. Well, Tommy is not really a meaningful loss. If you compare us to the start of last season and you look at where we were then, the squad that we went into last season with, we've added not only the signings this summer, but those emerging talents in Nwaneri and MLS that weren't, you know, ready to be playing that amount of first team football last summer, we thought at least anyway. And then on top of that, the only losses have been obviously, Thomas Partey, which is, many reasons, but it's been more than adequately replaced.
yeah,
Jorginho, which last season, that's not a lot of minutes you're getting
no.
rid of. And Tommy, which, for love the man to bits, but it's kind of no loss at this point. We've
No,
been
but
past that.
you could say Mosquera's now filling in the Tommy role because he can play across multiple positions, and you have Calafiori can play 2 positions and stuff. So we're covering that with 2 players. So
So I think that's the other noticeable
yeah,
thing for me, at
yeah,
least anyway. It's just that there's,
yeah,
we haven't yet lost a Trossard, for instance,
no,
or a Martinelli or anyone like that,
no,
or anyone that's really the only significant minutes that have gone is Partey, and they have been more than adequately
yeah.
replaced.
You could say even upgraded depending on based on where we want to go and how we want to play. So,
But I mean, I would
so
say, yeah, yeah,
yeah, yeah,
absolutely.
and if we were to lose a Trossard or a Martinelli, I think it would be because we want to get someone else in to improve the a certain part of the pitch. So we haven't got time to talk about Eze now, but if that option were to become available, or even Rodrigo, we would have to sell one of the two, I think, to get that player in potentially. And so even then, is that a loss, or is that just changing of the guards, as they say? So there we go. So look, that's that was a lot to cover there, and I've got the AC Milan game seems ages ago, but it was only an hour ago. So look, thank you, Jamie, for joining me as ever. Thanks for your time and your comments.
Fabulous. Thank you very much, Tabs.
And yeah, if you can follow us on Threads and Blue Sky at the Grove AFC. The next show will be after the Newcastle game on Sunday. Likely we record Monday or Tuesday next week, and where I hope we're not talking about Joel Linton induced leg breaks, ligament snaps, and hospitalizations, and I hope it's a friendly game in name and as well as in nature as much as it can be against that lot. And yeah, look, if you enjoy what you hear from us at the Grove Podcast, then please like, subscribe, leave us some comments, all the usual, all the things, just to help us sort of promote the podcast. It's very much appreciated. So thank you everyone for listening, for your time and being here after 80 minutes. And as always, until the next time, come on you Gunners.